So what's great about this evening is that it's a different choir. There are some different faces. Often at these types of things, I see the same faces. And although it may be new messages or passing on of experiences, it's just fabulous to see some new messages. So as Nat said, I'm Andrew Cross. I lead Plastic Free Torridge. I'm also a founding member and core team member of Plastic Free North Devon. And I had a madcap idea in September. That's the kind of start for this. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to walk you through some slides. It might be an idea if you pop your questions into the chat, as they pop into your head, and we'll go through them at the end. I hope you find this interesting. I hope that it's of use to you and some value. It dodges around a little bit. It's a little chaotic, but I have to tell you, so's the campaign. So it does kind of represent what we've done pretty well. So that's me. Okay. That's me trying to get my IT working. Right. So the hopes for tonight really are that my shared experiences are of value to you. We made some mistakes early in the campaign, which we rectified very quickly. And we found ourselves gaining momentum. And I wish there was someone else I could have talked to say, well, when you hit this, what happened? What did you do? So I hope that's of value. I hope that, just need to move this down, bear with me. Right. I hope that the parliamentary petition that we've got running at central government is of interest. Local campaigns are vital to make an impact, especially with the holiday makers this season. But ultimately, as you'll find out, we need government help here, and the parliamentary petition is one angle we've got to try and get that. And I just hope that in communities across Cornwall, you can start your own campaigns. So, great question. And this was where I was at last week. Where do I start with this one? So I thought I'd start with thank yous. Normally in these things, you have a huge breadth of activities that need to be done, and a small number of people willing to help. And the people on this screen have been instrumental in getting this campaign as far as it is. You may recognise Claire Moody of Plastic Free North Devon and the Ops Director Anne-Marie, Sadie Davis, first woman to swim from Heartland to Lundy. You may recognise Neil Hembrow from Ocean Recovery Project, looks like in his early modelling days. And then around the side, we've got some councillors. And I'll give a really specific mention to Nick Laws. Back in our September Plastic Free Community Steering Group, Nick Laws said to me in no uncertain terms, you need to get out from under your bushel, Andrew. It caused hilarity with the committee that was there, but I've never been told in my life to get into the limelight, normally told to get out of it. So this was the result. So how do we get started? Well, the first thing was to recognise that polystyrene bodyboards, these bodyboards are plastic pollution. It is that simple. Polystyrene is a plaster, and the nylon that covers them is too. The second thing we recognise is that Neil Hembrow, I call him the godfather of cheap polystyrene bodyboards. And although he hates me saying it, he woke me up one Saturday morning whilst being interviewed on Radio 5, talking about the problem of bodyboards. And it resonated with me. The surfing community across the Southwest largely, well, surfing community across the UK largely rejects these cheaper boards. They are perhaps a while ago, years ago, they were an introduction to enjoying the ocean, but I think times moved on, and in modern times, there's no place for these boards, and the serious surfing community rejects them. The other interesting piece of evidence that I got, I asked people, what do you think of these boards? And generally speaking, people either they didn't have an attitude, they certainly didn't realize there was a problem, or they hated them. It kind of fell into those two categories. And perhaps what was encouraging was that there was no one at that point anyway arguing that these boards are a really good thing to have on sale. So the next thing I did was to look at the assessment, or assess some of the local campaigns that were already in play. And a year or so ago, there was a campaign started by, I believe, a young resident, mainly targeting Sainsbury's, who had a real go at trying to get these boards banned. And it was a great flag raiser. It was a good awareness raiser for sure, but there wasn't really too much of an outcome. And I reflected heavily on why possibly that could be. And then in St. Ives, this year was a public call to action by the St. Ives Plastic Free Surface Against Sewage group. But again, it was a call to action. It was a kind of, we like this. Now, I'm a bit more outcome orientated. I like to see what can actually be achieved, as opposed to just talking about a subject which hopefully will educate and at some point in the future have an effect. So all of this went into the mixing pot. And the thinking was, well, I can't do this on my own. So easiest thing to do is to pull together a small team, and a small team that through discussion, we can agree a set of boundaries along which we can work without reference to each other continually, and with a group of people where the egos are small, we aren't going to upset one another, and we're just going for different reasons to allow each other to do what we do best. And so to that end, we pulled together Plastic Free Torridge, which wasn't difficult, Plastic Free Devon, North Devon, which wasn't difficult, and also Neil Hembrow, who was delighted to join us. The second thing was to focus down on what people understand. The problem with the bodyboard, the bodyboard problem, is that it's nuanced. And in talking with people, even those that are educated in the area, they couldn't articulate to me which bodyboards should be banned. Some put a price. In the case of Neil Hembrow, he dismissed all bodyboards made of multiple materials because of their difficulty in recycling or repurposing. And so this drew me to a couple of conclusions. So what do we actually need? Well, it became obvious that the sales of these boards, they're split into what I would call, without sounding too harsh, I hope, pretend surfer shops and gift shops. And the gift shops are far more focused on profit than they are on planet. And the gifts distributors, of which there are several in the Southwest, are purely intent on putting plastic tat in shops for people to buy. So are they going to listen to someone like me with an argument around why we shouldn't have these boards from an environmental perspective? No, they're not. And it's naive to think that we can convert them. So it became clear that we needed some central government support. Well, sometimes in the political world, you can use central government to reference and to gain a momentum, a credibility, to talk to the next level of decision making. Now, I decided that we'd start with central government and come down to local government, because without the backing of the councils, then the local councillors, when asked, could be ambivalent towards the campaign. And unless we've got a tight ship of agreement, then it's going to be quite easy for people to poke holes in the campaign. And thirdly, we need local community support. One of the best ways to impact a business is to change purchasing behaviour. Being business myself with a slant towards marketing, if you can change buyers' patterns in favour of what you want them to agree with, then you can make great inroads into any particular market. So these three things I thought was pretty important. Then we took some local resident attitudes, and we did that in numerous ways. We did some what I call fishing posts, where we put out some bits of information, sometimes controversial, sometimes not, certainly head turning, so that people would comment. And the idea was not to start the campaign, but was just to test residents' attitudes. There was a lot of concern at that point, I can tell you, that local businesses who are deemed to have been under the cosh with COVID would need all the support they could get when restrictions were being lifted. And removing a high, I'll use the term, high value sales item from their retail range could impact them negatively. But we'll come on to that a bit later. Then testing local business attitudes. And if we take Westward Ho as an example, we have a good community in Westward Ho. It's a small village. It is quirky. It's got a mixture of the usual businesses, the larger independent traders, with a couple of families dominating the scene. And then we have numerous independent retailers who often have been there for many, many years and present themselves. It's a seaside town. Here's your bucket and spade, enjoy the beach. But also we needed an angle with schools, because part of the campaign is education. If you don't know about the subject, it's difficult to either agree or disagree with it. So we felt there was also an opportunity to talk with local schools, and perhaps by engaging them, they could become useful to the campaign. It sounds a bit it sounds a bit ruthless, and probably it was, but the byproduct of that was that local school children, especially at a time when teachers were searching for activities that they were trying to introduce into the curriculum under the COVID restrictions, it was a good opportunity to present them with some work packs where they could both help the campaign and educate the children too. So the plan. So we brought the guys together. We crafted a simple 8-point message. I'll come on to that in a moment. That's really, really important. We wrote to both the local MPs. We ran a single question referendum. The UK loves a referendum, as we found out, and we managed to gain nearly 1,800 opinions of people, yes or no opinions, to test what the local appetite was across Northern Devon, so it was Torridge and North Devon, to test the local attitudes and also to test the objections. It's all very well having a lot of people agreeing with you, but sometimes it's just of greater value to find those people who disagree with you and find out why, and then find answers to those questions. And we found great, as I'll show you, we found great value in that. So with the MPs supporting and some evidence from the local community that the support was there too, we felt confident enough to start asking local councils to pass motions of support. But we didn't just want the district councils, the Torridge and North Devon. We wanted every district, town and parish council to pass motions of support. And at the time, when you've got a blank sheet of paper, that seems like a tall order. We wanted to encourage local schools, and the role they had in the campaign was to write to local retailers, requesting them to remove from sale all cheap polystyrene bodyboards. Now, this was clothed, as far as the children were concerned, into an education piece around nature, around the oceans, around plastic pollution. But this was typically set as a literacy project. So as part of their literacy curriculum, Teachers that were setting writing tasks for children to complete. And the final thing is, I've experienced this with other campaigns, is communication. How's it going? What's happening? Is there any progress? I didn't hear from them again. These were some of the feedback we had from the general public. So we created a pool of interested people, which we communicate through a closed Facebook group. We have a core team of people, including councillors and now both MPs, as will become obvious, business people, and also a PR list. So we have a PR list now ranging from the BBC, ITV, Radio 5 Live, certain celebrity producers, as well as all the local papers who want to learn more about the campaign. They want to follow its progress and they want to know what's happening. And of course, all of this leads to greater opportunity to promote the campaign. And the more we can get it promoted, the thinking was the more we can get signatures onto our petition. So this is key. What you're about to see is included on every press release we've ever sent out. The messaging hasn't changed. At times we remove one part of the messaging as it's a bit hard. And for politicians, the health messaging we remove because we know they can't agree with it. So this is true to say, this is true to say, this is true to say, and this is true to say. And this is all Keep Britain Tidy messaging. It's just been simplified. And the description we used for the boards are the sub £10 brightly printed cloth covered boards, which we in press releases called the brightly coloured boards. And we describe them when asked as blocks of polystyrene covered in fabric, because that's what they are. And what this allowed us to do was to focus on those cloth covered boards and not what we call the shiny bottom boards. And the reason is simple. The shiny bottom boards are so nuanced. There are boards you can spend nearly £100 on that are very robust and could well last you a lifetime. So when you say cheap polystyrene bodyboards, when we're being interviewed, at every stage we said, cheap polystyrene bodyboards, you know the ones, they're cloth covered, brightly printed, blocks of polystyrene. And people nod because they know what we're talking about. Whereas if we communicated it as brightly coloured shiny bottom boards or brightly coloured cheap bodyboards, cheap is a relative term. Cheap for some could mean under £40. Cheap, as far as we're concerned, must mean under £10. So we spent quite a bit of time crafting that message and ensuring that in all communications, whether it was myself or Claire or Neil, when being interviewed on the radio, or as you'll see a bit later, interviewed for the TV, we got this messaging across. Now, there are other impacts of these boards, and we wanted to introduce something much wider than just waste. The Neil Hembrow's Ocean Recovery Project started a website called Wave of Waste, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant in what it does. But in the current climate, the themes aren't necessarily waste. The themes are climate change and carbon emissions. If we were focused on waste, then we would probably be outraged by the 9.5 million tons of food we see as waste in the UK every year, but it doesn't get a headline. So that wasn't the right vehicle to ride. So we instead decided to focus on the fact that they were sourced typically from China and are transported thousands of miles on boats, creating a carbon footprint to snap within minutes of use. The further problem was polystyrene. because people, how do people communicate polystyrene? Well, polystyrene sits in our cars. It sits in many places in our daily lives, often hidden from our eyes. But most people have bought, most people we talk to of a certain age have bought flat back furniture. All the IKEA fans, the old IKEA fans anyway, would have had that instance where after opening a box, pieces of polystyrene, they break up, they fall all over the floor. You have to vacuum before you can put the stuff that you bought together. And of course, it's quite irritating. So being able to create that imagery when talking about polystyrene allowed us to then easily show where the possible dangers are to sea and shore life. So we started communicating as white polystyrene balls. Now, I talked with someone and we developed some side messaging off the side of this. Every bodyboard contains at least 1 million polystyrene balls. How do we know this? Primary school maths. So polystyrene balls are typically between 5 millimeters and 8 millimeters in diameter. And a quick bit of maths, when you measure a reasonably sized board, will equate to 1.397 million polystyrene balls, which we simply communicated as over 1 million balls. So that gave us some side messaging, not just to talk to the press, but also to talk on social media about the campaign. And we ran a particular weekend, and with the help of Lego at Sea, who gave us some photographs to use for a particular weekend's posting, we announced that these cheap polystyrene boards were a load of balls. And that allowed us to get a little cheeky headline, but also allowed us to, with confidence, announce that each polystyrene bodyboard contained 1 million polystyrene balls. So the second problem, which people haven't thought about, but they understand, is that when polystyrene goes into the sea, because it's so light, it floats. Yeah, we get that. We understand that. But anything in the sea attracts algae. That's why boats are cleaned every year. So attracting algae adds weight, and with weight, it will sink. And once it's sunk, it presents itself as a morsel of food to fish. And so it can get into our food chain. But more importantly, perhaps, it presents a danger to wildlife. So depending on the audience that we were talking to, we would just slightly fork left or fork right the messaging. But the impact of it was immense. We had so many people go, ah, and indicating that they understood what we were talking about. So the other bit of big news that again doesn't get any real exposure is that the World Health Organization, and we were fortunate in late 2020 that the WHO was very much at the forefront of people's minds. They upgraded styrene, which is one of the key building blocks in polystyrene, the clue's in the name, from a possible to a probable carcinogen. And we even then had to explain to people that that's a probable cause of cancer. Now, the fact of the matter is that not enough research has been done on this. There's lots of calls for additional research. But I suspect, rolling the dice, an outside bet would be that the oil and gas industry would not like us to know some of the dangers of styrene, because the base product for all of these materials is, of course, oil. So, oh, hello. Right, what happened first? Well, we wrote to our local MP, Sir Geoffrey Cox, ex-Attorney General. He who said that Parliament was a dead duck, a robust man, one of the top lawyers in the country, very articulate gentleman, of a political persuasion I don't agree with. And that was quite important to me. Now, Geoffrey and I have got on over the last couple of years, and there's a few projects that we've done together. We put on a plastic free festive fair in Westwood Ho. and a spring fair to follow, and Jeffrey helped open the spring fair. He helped launch both plastic collecting sculptures in Westwood Ho, and he understood it. He got it, and he wrote back to me. And these slides will be available, so you can, without straining your eyes, read them at your leisure. But he's highly supportive of the campaign, and he reiterated to us the extreme importance of such local campaigns, and the importance of not selling these polystyrene bodyboards. Now, this is a core Conservative politician whose one of their basic premise is enterprise, is laissez-faire, is not to be involved. And as you'll see a bit later, he's becoming more and more involved because the danger of these boards is quite pronounced. Selene Saxby. Selene Saxby is the North Devon MP, again a Conservative, newly elected. The angle with her was a little simpler. She's trying to gain friends in the area. She's made a couple, in my view, PR blunders during the autumn period. But all I needed from her was her support, because I had in mind getting motions passed at North Devon Council and at Torridge Council, and I'd like them to be unanimous. And to do that, I need the Conservative vote. I'm going to get the Green vote. That's easy. I'm probably going to get the Labour vote. I'm most likely to get the Independent vote. We don't have any UKIP councillors, fortunately, but we do have Conservatives. And if the local MPs are backing that campaign, I'm going to get their support. So it was very important to ensure that Selene understood the campaign, understood the boundaries through which she could work. She very much wanted, I think, to have a bigger shining light than she got, because it would have reflected well on her, being a new MP in the area. But for us, the fact that both local MPs expressed their support was extremely important. So off to the councils we went, and I've just popped some things up there. The Torridge District Council's motion of support sits on the left, and on the right you can see North Devon Council, and you'll also see at the bottom, and I'll come back to that in a moment, Bideford Town Council. Now, in the main, the councils passed the motion of support and agreed to write to the local retailers. Now, Bideford Town Council were successful in targeting Tesco's, and Tesco's in Bideford stopped selling these boards. They were removed from sale. And this gave us a little platform, with the help of Bideford Town Council, to approach Tesco's across Northern Devon. So the superstores at Ilfracombe and at Braunton and the express stores. It gave us the opportunity to talk to the area manager about what else can be done. And I'm pleased to say, although I'm still waiting for Tesco's to sign off the press release I've written, that Tesco's across Northern Devon, North Devon and Torridge will not be selling these boards this coming summer. They've been removed from sale. Once that's been announced, the obvious thing to do next is to target the other supermarkets, and that's what we intend to do. But we need the precedent set by Tesco's first. Come and join Tesco's. Tesco's are getting quality publicity, reflecting another small step on their greening up journey, and we'd like you to join them too and remove these boards from sale. So we're going to leverage, for the purposes of the campaign, what Tesco's are doing with the other supermarkets. And it all started with the MPs giving their support, which helped catalyst all of the local councils to provide their support. And although I can't show it on here because it would just be too small, these were all unanimous votes. Regardless of who you vote for, they supported the campaign. The referendum. So we announced a referendum. Tongue-in-cheek, when talking with journalists or whoever, I would say, yeah, we love a good referendum in the UK. That's not divisive at all. And we found ourselves getting quite a bit of press coverage, even some in Cornwall. You'll notice tonight I put Viewed and Beyond centre stage. And we used two mechanisms to do it. We used a closed Facebook page, and we have a community news site called North Devon News, which has around 50,000 or now 55,000 plus subscribers. Most of them are dormant, but it's quite a good cross section of the community. And from looking at the post and some of the reactions, especially to organisations like Extinction Rebellion, I knew that if we could get the referendum going on that site, we would get a good cross section, an indication of what the local community thinks. Anyway, the upshot of it all was that we got some press coverage for the campaign. We ran the referendum for a 2-month period, and we received a 97% in favour of removal of sale of these boards. Now, that again gave us a fact, and it's nice to have facts when you're going to talk with businesses. If 97% of the local community believe that these boards should be removed from sale, businesses live in the community as well. So it is of partial importance to them that they maintain good relationships with the local community. The Northern Devon population ranges from 153,000 to just under 2 million people during the summer. But in the winter months, it's at 163,000. And the local businesses that are open rely on the local resident support to keep trading. So there is an angle there to encourage local businesses to become good residents as well as good businesses. We produced the simplest piece of campaign collateral, I think, in the history of campaigning. It certainly wasn't as fancy as many of the campaign leaflets that we've seen, and with working with Surfers Against Sewage. They produced some marvelous stuff. But we sent out to our local schools. We sent out a brief description of what we're trying to do. We set out some steps, and if a sample letter was needed, we provided a sample letter. The response from schools was terrific. It was absolutely terrific, and the teaching community, especially the plastic free schools who signed up to the Surfers Against Sewage scheme, were really, really supportive. And I know that at the start, a few businesses who were saying, well, you know, tell us what we need to do, and we're with you, Andrew. They were a little skeptical about getting children involved, and I think that's a fair concern. But the teachers weren't, and frankly, children growing up, they don't need to be scared. You just need to be encouraged to do positive things and to understand what things are good and what things are bad. And polystyrene bodyboards, we felt, was a strong enough threat to the natural environment all these children enjoy for them to get involved with the campaign. Business, the big one. So how do we convince businesses? Well, the challenges are very simple. These boards are a big contributor to sales and profit. They were lots needed to attract footfall. And the businesses were coming out of COVID. And even the businesses that were in agreement with what we were doing were highlighting these areas. We guessed right. So the big contributor to sales and profit. So I'll just address that one. So the argument we used, very simple. A £10 bodyboard for a retailer, a seaside retailer, isn't £10, it's £8.32, because they're all VAT registered and you can't keep the VAT. So From those £8.32, what's the cost of the board? Well, the board coming in, if they're £10, they're probably between £5 and £6. So you're left somewhere between £2.32 and £3.32 gross profit. Out of that gross profit, there's a couple of things you need to take care of. One is, of course, credit card charges. That's a small amount, insignificant. But the second and most important thing is returns, because not all parents leave their broken bodyboards on the beach, and they bring back those boards and they bring them back to the shop. That presents the shop with two problems. First is they've lost the sale, and the second is they've lost money on that product. There's no warranty on these products from China. It's stack them high and sell them cheap. So the final problem the retailers got, and they're quite heavily regulated on waste, is how to properly dispose of them. And so the sum of the parts led us down conversational routes where we concluded with the businesses that banning these boards is good for business, not bad for business. You're removing those returns that you experienced last year. You're giving your customers a better experience because you're selling them a better value product. And also, consumers don't like these boards. Now, the wonderful thing about the British consumer is that in the main, we're quite quiet about stuff. Okay, some of us are, but some of us are. And when we don't like something, we tend to make judgment and move on. So my argument to the retailers was simple. You don't know how many customers you're losing. You don't know how many customers are going down the road to the other shop who's not doing this. You don't know how much profit you could be losing this year. And to say that the environment is less of a consideration in consumers' purchasing decisions is simply naive, because every indicator in marketing today is showing us that consumers are looking for eco-friendly products. And so polystyrene bodyboard, seeing polystyrene bodyboard, 1 million balls per board, impacting our the local natural environment, isn't something you want to be associated with. And of course, we had the conversations where people denied that it's the case, and there's not a problem in Westwood Ho. You need to go to Bude, you don't need to be in Westwood Ho, and all of this type of thing. And so what I dumbed down on was that consumers make decisions on where they are. They don't make decisions to buy stuff in Westwood Ho based upon something that's happening in Bude. They base it on what's happening in Westwood Ho. So the second thing that we enabled as a value to businesses is, if you become part of this, we'll publicize that you are part of it and you will get free publicity. So we have a particular business that's helping us with something I'm not going to talk about tonight, but it's helping us with a solution to all of this. And he was featured on a piece of film footage that I'll show you in a little while. And if he was to try and get that amount of airtime on prime time television, it would cost him thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. But by working with us, he was able to get that recognition without spending a penny. The other businesses in the village, where they're at now, to give you an indicator, they bought it into this. Obviously, that's why we've announced the ban. And they are highly protective of it. They're very proud of it. They've swapped out their cheap polystyrene boards, and businesses that were selling £5 to £10 boards are now selling £60 wooden boards, because the other side to this for business is that your average order value, your retail sales value, goes up. So instead of all that effort and time and energy spent in serving a customer on a gift shop customer, very different to a serve shop customer. A gift shop customer goes in and buys. They don't expect someone who's selling fudge, rock and wooden bodyboards to be an expert on wooden bodyboards. It's a gift shop. So the amount of time that retailers are spending business time selling cheap polystyrene bodyboards is being converted into time being spent on selling wooden boards. So it's most definitely good for business, and the businesses in Westward Ho have bought into that. Now, the businesses at Saunton Beach learnt of this, and they, without question, committed to never ever selling again these boards. Within 2 weeks, Croyd committed not to sell these boards. Croyd was an interesting one because Croyd had a mobile sales van stacked with cheap polystyrene bodyboards. Upset the local community by parking in a lay-by that should be perhaps used for visitors. Very little Devon County Council governance of that. So it's quite an unpopular person. One conversation: we're not selling these boards this year. Life has moved on. We're selling wooden bodyboards. And this for us gave the whole team a real boost, because it showed that the attitudes of business were changing. And perhaps the challenge that we thought was mighty back in September and October was actually not as mighty, and our efforts could be more focused now on those that are being, let's say, sticks in the mud. So the ban. Wonderfully, the business community decided en masse. We have a good business association there, and I have excellent relationships with all the businesses. And they said, yeah, we'll support you. We'll do it. Let's do it. You go and do your thing. We'll do our thing. So the bottom left-hand corner is part of a poster that is now proudly displayed in many of the shops around Westward Ho. They are very proud of the decision that they've made. I think it reiterates their commitment to protecting what earns them money. What earns them money is their position by the sea, and stuff that threatens that is a risk to their business. And I think when we communicate with businesses about business risk, about gross profit, about costs within the business, and alongside all the other environmental messaging, it has a better chance of resonating than just the environmental messaging. And the objective was to ban the boards. And along the way, if we can educate some people and provide them with a few more facts, happy days. But it's about getting rid of the boards. Now, right, if you just bear with me, I have to change screens. So this is the short ITV footage video package that was produced and put out on the ITV News. Let me explain.
There's not much out there that can match the joy of catching a wave. There's one type of board that leaves locals with a sinking.
They just don't catch the waves. There's no buoyancy. So I mean, you feel like you're sinking a lot of the time rather than being pushed forward.
All of the polystyrene just explodes and it comes out into the sea, kills all of the fish and turtles and whales.
16,000 of these nylon-wrapped polystyrene bodyboards are abandoned every year in the UK. They have a tendency to snap and are often thrown away at the end of a holiday. So independent shops in Westward Ho are drawing a line and refusing to sell them from now on. They cost us about a tenner, but with tiny profit margins, surf shop owner Peter says they're not even worth the hassle.
If somebody came up to me and gave me £3 and said, can I just sprinkle this all over the floor? You're not going to do it. And it's exactly the same thing. You're selling that product knowing that it's going to end up putting polystyrene into the ocean. This is the front of the wave. I think you'll see that most places around the UK will stop selling these.
That's what campaigners are trying to achieve, bringing the UK in line with the North Devon village.
We need to get every single multi-chain retailer on board with this ban, and to do that we're going to need to have government legislation behind us. We hear rhetoric from our national political leaders.
about how we're going to lead the world. Well, this is one simple action that can be taken where we can lead the world.
On a bracing February, we have miles of unspoiled coastline here at Westwindhoe, and locals want people to stop buying these plastic boards so people can enjoy this coastline for years to come, pollution-free. Sadie was the first woman to swim to Lundy and back to raise awareness of plastic in our oceans. She says this isn't a ban on families using them, they're just asking them to consider buying or hiring wooden ones instead.
Completely understand why people buy them. I mean, they're cheap and, you know, kids love them, but buying something cheap, there's always that guilt of, you know, I know this isn't good for the environment. I know it's, you know, its carbon footprint is colossal, and it breaks up into tiny pieces and it ends up in the ocean, and it can't all be picked up, you know, it can't all be recollected. It ends up in our food chain.
It might be a while before the rest of us chooses to head into the sea, but campaigners hope you'll be splashing down with a wooden board instead. Charlotte Gay, ITV News.
Right. See if I can be clever. Seamless. Yeah, one example of how the press get things wrong. Sadie was teased for days after that was released. She swam from Heartland to Lundy. She didn't swim back again. She got a boat. I think it was a superhuman effort to get from the mainland to swim to Lundy. In later 10 o'clock news report, apparently she swam round Lundy as well, which came as a surprise to Sadie and the rest of us. But a little lesson in how the press can embellish things. Right, so that's good. So at this point, we thought, well, we've got the referendum, we've got some momentum, we've got a story, we've got an example. We understand the broad messages we need to offer communities and businesses to get self-imposed bans put in. But of course, we're really going to need the government on side. So we created, which you would think was a very simple process, a parliamentary petition. It's not. Parliamentary petitions are approved by the Parliamentary Petitions Committee and take up to 6 weeks to discuss and approve, subject to any changes. Sometimes they ask you to rewrite things, sometimes they ask you to reword, re-emphasize, as it was explained to me. And it can take anywhere between 5 to 6 weeks for each element of the process. I wrote this and sent it off, and I have to tell you, it was approved in 6 days. There wasn't any objection. People got it straight away. And whoever's on that petition, Parliamentary Petitions Committee, I'd like to thank him very much. Faceless, of course, but we managed to get this petition up and running very, very quickly. So our local MP, Sir Geoffrey Cox, he is, as I said earlier, very supportive of the campaign. Now, the parliamentary petition, what does that mean? What does that give us over and above some of the other petitions? Well, all petitions give an indication of support for sure, but the outcome is that you want change. And if you want legislation changed, then Parliament's the place to get it done. At 10,000 signatures, the government has to respond. And at 100,000 signatures, they have to get a debate. That's what they have to do. That's the kind of law in this country. But as MP wanted to see quicker action, so he asked what's called a parliamentary question, and he got the government response. So when the petition, the national petition, gets to 10,000, this is what they'll respond with, unless we can change things in the meantime, which again you can read from your packs. But the upshot is that the government, as ever, this particular flavour of government, it's not about central government, it's not about legislation, but we welcome all local actions that are taking place. And we, in general, prefer, as said in the last paragraph, to help people and companies make the right choice rather than banning items outright. So this is a kind of, this is a go away question. So I wrote back to, or contacted Jeffrey, and I said, well, look, you know, this, get me a meeting with Boris. I'd had enough. I'll be honest with you, I'd had enough. I just wanted a meeting with Boris. So Boris is a bit busy. But in his agenda, in Jeffrey's agenda, will be, once he's genned up on the subject, he'll propose a meeting. So I am hoping that when the restrictions are lifted, and providing he's there or whoever's there, I don't care. In the year of COP26, I think there's an opportunity for the government to take a small step with these boards and announce a ban. Whichever way you look at these boards, they are just rubbish. They're rubbish value for parents. They don't make businesses a lot of money. They're creating a carbon footprint coming in from China. They damage the environment. It's just rubbish, literally. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. It's still early days, and I think Boris has got his hands full with other things at the moment, but there you are. So I guess the big question is how to get involved, and we started to get some interest from other communities. And I had a couple of conversations with a few communities in Devon who were saying, you know, how do we do this? How do we get involved? How do we start our own campaign? And you'd start to explain the campaign and have a chat. And in the main, people had started their journey towards trying to get a ban in place, but had failed. One particular South Devon community said we haven't got any further than getting a parish councillor on board. And I think the message I wanted to impart to you all is that if you're going to get a campaign together, go top down. Get your MP involved, then get the district councillors involved, then get the parish councillors involved, get the community involved alongside that, perhaps with a vote, a referendum, a poll, whatever you're comfortable with, and combined, you may get some headway. Just talking with a local councillor, who, regardless of their political persuasion, you have to remember they get voted in. So becoming associated with things that voters like is always it's something that you can use for sure, but it's also something you need to be mindful of when you're assessing how useful that person is to you. So we produced, thanks to Anne-Marie Everly of Plastic Free North Devon, we produced a very short series of steps for people to take, and added some links and the offer of, if you get stuck, send me an email. Tell me what the problem is, and I'll search back in my memory as to when we hit that problem and tell you what we did. And if it's a problem that is so different to anything else that we faced, then I will reflect and spend some time, and I will come back to you with a considered, some considered options for you to go and try. Because when you're out there campaigning, it doesn't matter whether it's Extinction Rebellion or it's Surfers Against Sewage or it's the 2-minute beach clean. It doesn't matter. What you've got behind you are some very well thought through messages. And in the case of XR, SAS and 2-minute beach clean, you've got some very clever people at the top who've done it. And so they're there, they've got the answers for you. And we felt, well, just encouraging people to start a campaign, unless we give them something a little bit extra and offer to assist them, then I think it will be very difficult and perhaps a bit daunting, maybe even scary for some of the leaders in local communities to kind of kick this off. So That's what we did. And we've got quite a way from a madcap idea, a lockdown project, if you call it what you want. We find ourselves now with party political support. We have the Green Party, Jonathan Bartley behind us. We have Ed Vasey from the Lib Dems, who has come out in support. We have Luke Pollard, who's the Shadow Environment Minister, in support. We have something going on with the Conservative Party at Downing Street, and we'll wait to see what actually pans out, but that looks like a bit of fun to me. If we did get a meeting with Boris, and that could be that should be recorded, that's for sure. So there are great opportunities, I think, within the local community to have some impacts. And for those of you with other campaigns or perhaps other hats on, this complements your other objectives, and you will get for your campaign group. You will get the local media looking at you. Now, by a show of hands, has anybody heard of Chaos?